Hi, Bronwyn. I'd like to welcome you here today on this chat we're having all about EMF. Um, so you're a building biologist,
Yes, I am. And
yes?
I've been a building biologist since about 2015 when I first completed my Certificate 5 in building biology. And that's when I sort of found the business name, launched the business, threw myself in the deep end and just got stuck into, wanting to change the world. But then I did upskilled in about 2017 from the Certificate 5 up to the advanced diploma in building biology. And I found that just blew my mind, the fields that we now are so heavily involved in and the health effects. So that's, yeah, I think it's keeping me busy and out of trouble.
I bet it is. Now, building
Yeah.
biology is something I stumbled across quite a few years ago as well, and was just absolutely amazed at what building biologists do. Um,
Yes.
so one of them, of course, is EMF, electromagnetic field assessments, which is what I do. But you've gone on and you've actually studied more with building biology. So can you tell me what a full-blown building biologist actually does?
Oh, actually does. So, as a building biologist, we basically look at the relationship between the human being and the building, and the relationship of the building and our environment and the health of the people who live in the building. So, it can be residential, it can be our workplace. And one of the new areas I'm really getting stuck into with mold is the car as well. So, wherever we spend time, whether home, work, car, family house,
Hmm.
affects our health or has the potential to have health effects. And that's where I love what I do. And I'm very passionate because, especially with lockdown, so many more people are now working from home. We've got our children who have been online learning. And being in your home 24/7, you realize that, the condensation on the windows is an issue. We've now, as you'd be very aware, brought in, updated to the NBN here in Melbourne in particular.
Mm.
So we've now bombarded our homes with lots of different EMFs, EMRs, EMEs, radio frequencies. There's so many different names for it. Electro smog, electro pollution. So I think our role as building biologists is we've studied in so many different aspects, and now we're going into a home and looking at the holistic health of the home. So it's not just the internal, it is the externals as well. So where do you live? So how close proximity to your mobile phone antennas, even your neighbour's Wi-Fi. There's so many different uh, sources of the radiation and electromagnetic fields. So our role is to go into people's homes. I predominantly work residential. I prefer that rather than commercially, and work with people to identify all the different sources. Some are very obvious, like mobile phone towers, and some are very hidden. So it's great that we've got the science and we've got our meters,
Mm.
and it's not just thinking this is the issue. We can actually use our equipment and our training to identify the issues and then implement changes.
Yes, very, and a lot of the changes are just so simple, aren't they? Just if people
They are.
just realised, just had an idea. Now, on the
Yes.
questions I've got to ask you, if there's any that I ask and there's no like correct or no answer for it, like this one,
Yes.
um, which is how did people initially react when you got started as an EMF consultant? What was
Yeah. I think in general, like, so my family, they just, they're so supportive. So for my family, it was just great, get out there, change lives, make a difference, life purpose, all the very positive issues. And at the time when I started studying, I'd been working in natural medicine. I was, you sort of think, where does this all start? So, 55 years of being on the earth, I've done a lot of things, studied a lot of different modalities. So family it was like the next step for me. But what I did find initially with complete strangers, there's people who are so skeptical about it all and very trusting that if it's not safe, it wouldn't be on the shelf, or if it's not safe, our homes wouldn't be, cocooned in fields. So that's where I found for some people the reaction was, is this necessary? And for other people it was, and still is to this day, some people who are very, very unwell. I know it's made a huge difference. It's validated their health and it's given them a way of healing. And for me, that's what I'm all about, is the connection with people and validation that, every time you get, this red rash starts here and rises up, it's not from drinking, sulfates in wine. For some people, it's their exposure to mobile phones. So that's been amazing to realize that. So yeah, mixed responses.
So it's very interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people think, yeah, like you say, well, it's all around us. It can't be harming us, but it's not like it.
Yes.
It's funny, isn't it? Because some people, it can, just like that, they get symptoms, whereas other people, it accumulates over, it can be years. Yes. And then they get the chronic health effects that are associated with exposure. So have you or your family or anyone, close to you had issues due to exposure to EMF, or would you classify them as being, electrically sensitive?
Yes, and this was something I was thinking about this the other day. Many years ago, and we are talking back in 1996, my parents actually ran a Tats Lotto agency, and it was where we were introducing a new game called Powerball. And as a part of the promotion, so I was working in the shop with them while I was studying natural medicine. We had a plasma ball that was on our counter to get people's attention as they walked in, that, there's a new game, it's called Powerball. It's, you could win millions, change your life. And whenever the plasma ball was turned on, myself and a colleague, or another person who was working in the shop, we all immediately got headaches. And it was that moment where I realized if I stood right next to my register at the terminal, which was next to the ball, I was getting a headache. But if I sort of moved further away, the headache went. And if we turned the plasma ball off completely, there was no headache. And that was my first moment, I think, that I was aware that this plasma ball, which was sparkly, and if you put your finger on it, you could chase the beam around. And that was my moment in life where I realized, wow, that's giving me a headache. So that's the first time I became aware. But over the years, I think not so much my immediate family, but I've met, certainly with doing the work that I have, I've met other people who have described to myself that they are electrically sensitive. And once I qualified as a building biologist, and I was going out to different community groups. Stop Smart Meters Australia is based in Melbourne, and so many people were fighting the rollout or the introduction of smart meters here in Melbourne, which was back in 2009. They were so totally against smart meters because they were electrically sensitive. So they were, and that was a number of years ago, before all these mobile phones, before many other devices. So I've sort of been aware of it for a long time.
And it's really interesting that you actually clicked and connected, because this is what a lot of people don't do. They don't connect. Oh, every time I use my mobile phone, my hand goes numb, or this happens, and they don't kind of really connect that. So, and way back then, when was that? 96.
96, yes.
For that to for you to recognize that was an amazing thing. And then I suppose when you went through and you did your building biology and you studied the EMF side of it, you're like, aha.
Yep, it all makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
I remember the first time I became aware of someone that I would classify as being, really electrically sensitive was when I was down in Melbourne and I was doing another course, and one of the ladies in the course, none of us could have our mobile phones on, because she said it just drove her crazy. And if one of us went out for a break, turned our phone on and checked stuff and walked back in the room, she knew straight away.
Yes.
She would get all these symptoms. And I met a lot of the people that call me in and they say, I'm not mad, am I? And I say, no, you're not mad. It's a thing. And some of us are more susceptible to it than what others are. So when you go into a home and you assess for EMF, or what we call electromagnetic fields, there's two types that you assess for. Is that correct?
Yes, there is. Yes.
Yep.
So,
And what are they? What two types are they?
okay. So I look at particularly, I do the near field and the far field. So I look at what's around the house, first of all, from the outdoors. So that's, usually radio frequencies from mobile phone towers and so forth. And then when I come into the home itself, I'm looking at the AC magnetic fields, which is basically your electrical wiring, all of your electric appliances, your meter box, and so forth. So AC magnetic fields, so I have a meter called a Gauss meter that I use to take those levels. And it's wonderful having building biology standards, which came from Germany, because they're health-based standards rather than just Australian, she'll be right, mate type standards that we do have. So I can compare the readings from my meters for the AC magnetic fields and then compare those to our standards of what is safe, what isn't safe. I do acknowledge that there's AC electric fields, and the AC electric fields, I find, I acknowledge that they're there, but I don't tend to actually spend time measuring them because they fluctuate. They can be quite difficult to measure, and then to actually rectify is again quite difficult. So I acknowledge they're there and work with the client as much as I can to see what we can do with that. So yeah, predominantly AC magnetic fields and then the radio frequencies are the two main ones. There is also what we call dirty electricity. And again, I find it fluctuates and it's quite individual to each home. And that's something that I don't openly advertise that I do measure dirty electricity, but I'm certainly very aware that it is there. And for some people who are very sensitive, that's what they're reacting to, especially now we have, inverters, whether it's the split systems for our air cooling and the, installation of solar panels and solar power on our houses. So that's changing the whole field, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a lot more going on in an environment than what we think electrically is. That's for sure. And I know with the electric fields too, they've got a kind of a mind of their own, haven't they?
They do. They
kind of jump all over the place, and it's so hard to get that accurate reading of them.
Oh, exactly.
So this is a difficult question, and it's one that intrigues me. So with the radio frequency radiation, which is one type of EMF, and the magnetic fields, which is another type, they're from two different, totally different sources.
Yes.
Do you find one that, in your opinion, you think would be worse than the other on people's health? Or do you think
I really thought about this. I just thought it's really hard to say because there's such different individual issues. And at the end of the day, we need to avoid both sources when we're doing our rest and repair work. So it's, when we're sleeping or meditating, where we spend time. So I would say that no, I wouldn't say one is worse than the other. They're both there and they both have different health effects. So some can be long-term exposure and others are very short-term. People react very quickly. So no, that's a tough one. One is not worse than the other. They both are as bad as each other.
I think I get a bit concerned when people say, "Oh, I don't need to have an EMF assessment done because I don't have a router or I don't have wireless technologies," and I think, oh my gosh, but you're just not aware of what's coming. Could be coming from the power lines out the front of the home, or know. So it's and you just don't know unless you measure. So I feel that the magnetic fields are a little bit underplayed. And we focus on radio frequencies so much more because they're just a new technology basically on the market. So yeah, I do want people to think more about those magnetic fields as well.
Oh, exactly. And I think a lot of that comes from, for so many years, it has just been misunderstood that the really low frequencies, because they're not, like an X-ray, they don't harm us. But when you look at the full, electromagnetic spectrum from low all the way to high, we do know now that there's so many studies that indicate that the AC magnetic fields from the high voltage power lines or high voltage transmission lines, there's so many factors that do have a negative impact. So it's the fact that we're spending time in that field for too long is the problem. And that's, as you say, quite often with the work that I'm doing, I actually have been contacted by clients who are unwell or their children are unwell. So I've, sort of moving on to case studies, but
great.
I had a family where, 6 children in the house. The eldest child was in the local children's hospital with leukemia. And they'd got to the point where they realised that the high voltage transmission lines that actually went over the back of their house, and they had a pylon basically inside their perimeter of the house. One of the aunties called me in and said, how bad is it? So they all were aware of it, but didn't really want to acknowledge it. And the oncologist basically said, no, there's nothing about those high voltage transmission lines that are affecting your child's leukemia. And the other 5 children were also being tested at the time because they were homeschooled. So they were in this house 24/7. When I did the readings, they weren't crazy high off the charts, but they were a constantly higher level than what the building biology standards or the guidelines say for us in areas that you spend time. And we've got rapidly developing bodies. So, it was a highlight for me. It was a real shock where I've gone, wow, we've got to get children out of this house. So eventually they did put it on the market. They sold, relocated. And I recently heard that the young child, that he was in remission and everything was going very well, which was great. Oh. But I just thought, what would have happened if they continued to live there? Because they were all born in the house. Their trampoline was directly underneath the power lines. It just blew my mind that the land itself was ever allowed to be sold to a public or to a property developer and was then sold to the public. It blew my mind. It's sort of like, we used to have easements, but the easements have disappeared. So.
Yeah, it's I just talking about that, I just had a friend, it was a couple of years ago, someone wanted to get bridging finance on a property, and so they asked for a photograph of the property, and they noticed that high transmission power lines, and because of that reason they wouldn't give them the finance.
Yes.
So I thought, oh wow, that's a positive,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's really interesting because it's not just the high voltage ones, it's just the power lines in the street. Whereas back in 1979, that was linked to the childhood leukemia way back then. And I know just with my place here with the power lines in the summer seasons, I have to move back into the back of my home because it's, where I'm renting, because of that same high magnetic field. So, it is a concern. And that's one that, if people just know, it can just be a simple matter sometimes of moving a bedhead that far sometimes, can't it? And you're out of that. Have you come across that, Bronwyn? Sometimes?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. And I was just thinking, before we sort of go on to something else, people aren't aware that we're electrical beings. Yeah. I think people, we can't all be studying medicine. We can't all know everything about anatomy and physiology and how the body functions. But just the fact that we are electrical bodies, and if you think, what is death? And death is defined as the end of the electrical activity in the brain. So we've evolved where I just think people aren't aware of that we are electrical beings, and when the electrical activity in the brain stops, that's it for us, and we can still be breathing. So it's something that, if people are aware that we're electrical beings, then surely we can then grow on the association that other electrical frequencies can interrupt our heartbeat, our brain, all the different frequencies that our body is operating on. And that just, again, blows my mind. It's just it's safe. She'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Yep.
Yeah, well,
And
exactly the
but we know
opposite.
it's not. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So I was sorry.
you're right.
I was just going to mention about the little things of moving the bed. That's just been incredible. I did have another case study where it was back in my early days out on the field, and I've had some doozies where a family contacted me. They had twin girls, and the girls, about 9 years of age, lived in different bedrooms, so they weren't together 24/7. One twin was perfectly healthy. The second twin was very unwell with autoimmune issues, alopecia, or all of the hair had fallen out, and was very chronically unwell. And so when I went into the home, I spent time in the sleeping areas, because that's where I really focus on, is where does everyone in the house spend time? Where does the family do their rest and repair work? Or, if you do yoga or meditation, or if the kids are gaming. So where does everyone spend time in the house? And with this family, with the twin, looked at her bed, and it made me realize, and also the relevance of always looking what is immediately on the other side of the wall. So in this case with the bedroom, and she was at the bedroom at the back of the house, the smart meter wasn't there, the switchboard wasn't there, the fuse box wasn't there. It was actually their automated watering system. So they had a watering system that was plugged in, turned on, that was directly next to her pillow where her bed was. And every time that came on the Gauss meter was 999 milligauss.
Wow.
And I checked, I thought at first I had a faulty meter, because I'd never seen it before that high. Like, it can't go any higher than that. And then the moment we switched it all, powered it off, it went down to, in the bedroom, 0.2, which is ideal for a sleeping area.
Yeah.
So that was an indication where the mother was with me, and I think she saw the look on my face when I kept testing and going outside and turning things off. And she almost wanted to just rip the thing out of the wall and throw it away. But that was such an amazing sort of moment, because you realize that it was simply coming out of that field, or totally avoiding that field by switching off the sprinkler system, made all the difference. And I heard recently, I sort of contacted them to see how everything was going, and the daughter is really, really mending well, and her hair has grown back, and she's now thriving, where she'd been sleeping in that field for 9 years. So
wow, that I was going to say, what keeps you going? And they're the kind of things that just keep driving you forward, aren't they, with the work that you do?
Oh, exactly. Yes,
my gosh,
exactly.
that is, got goosebumps. That is so rewarding. So what did they do? Did they sell the house, change bedrooms, do you know, or just
No, they totally got rid of the that's right, they totally got rid of the sprinkler system. So and as we sort of worked out, all they had to do was relocate the sprinkler system. So it wasn't, it was something so simple. So it's, looking where your bed is. I've had other places where the washing machine was on the other side of the wall from this little boy's room, and he was on the spectrum, had lots of behavioural issues and developmental issues, and the mother only did the washing at nighttime. So when the washing machine was working, again, he was sleeping in a really high magnetic field also. So we just had to work out a way of, when can you do the washing when the son's not in bed? And we also moved the bed to the other side of the room. So it was quite simple.
Yeah. Can you hear that call I'm getting through?
I can.
I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Look, that's really interesting, because I've had incidents too where I've just had to move the bed just a short way away from the clock radio. Now, who would think that a clock radio could throw out a high magnetic field?
Yes, especially the older ones. Yep.
Yeah. And even a bedside lamp. Like some I get no readings from, and then others I pick up really, really high readings. So you really don't know. You can't say bedside lamps are safe, because some of them aren't. Exactly. Like you can, like one of them, I think we worked out you had to be at least, 3 ruler lengths away from it. So it's not good if someone's studying with that,
exactly.
right next to them.
I found in particular there was, the touch lamps where you touch the base and you might touch it 3 times and it gets brighter and brighter. I found that particular one to have very high readings. But again, you only had to move it a short distance and it made a big difference. there was another lamp. There was a lady who was disabled and confined to either in the bed or into a chair. And it was permanently set up next to her chair. And it was the brightness of almost, I've actually tested this lamp in a doctor's surgery as well. So very, very bright, intense light. But it was about 125 milligauss, which again, in a sleep environment where you're spending time, you'd like it to be about 2 milligauss and below. So for this lady, she couldn't work out. She would get up in the middle of the night because her circadian rhythms were totally all over the place. And she just put that down to her health issues. And she would sit in this field reading a book. And then she couldn't sleep and she'd have headaches. So once we took the readings and realised, so we changed the lamp for a better or a less invasive lamp, and made a world of difference.
That is
little things.
So that reading is so high, that's so high, isn't it? Like,
yes,
it's just,
it is. It's crazy.
People just don't. Yeah, you wouldn't think.
And,
like, who would think?
No, always. And that's where I get so cross at times that you would expect these products to come with a health warning, and I still can't believe that we're selling electric blankets. That electric blankets are on the shelf and you can buy them, put them on your bed, turn it on and sleep in a field, in an AC magnetic field all night long.
Well, why is that? Because, the manufacturers, the powers that be, just refuse to acknowledge that this is an issue. And a lot of people don't know, that's why we do what we do, because it's all about educating, isn't it? So that people
exactly
are
right.
Yeah. So that's some great case studies there that you've shared with us. And I know you've got buckets loads more. Is there something that you see people doing quite regularly that makes you think, oh my gosh, please don't do that? Makes you like, shudder.
Yes, there's so many. This is the crazy thing. When you know what you know,
I know.
And you're out there in the world and you just go, oh no, please don't. So I think this might sound daft. 20 years ago when I was having my children, that's okay. Obviously someone's trying to call you. When I had my babies, I used to cringe when people would give their babies the car keys, these dirty keys to suck on or play with. What I now see is I actually watched this late. I was in a doctor's surgery, so we're waiting, and there was this beautiful, heavily pregnant lady sitting there, and she had a toddler at her knees. And I just thought, wow, I looked at her with admiration of how amazing our bodies are to bring new life into the world. How I just looked at her and thought, knowing my own journey, she's got her hands full, and I hope she's got a good support network. But where I shuddered was her mobile phone was balanced on her belly of her unborn child, and she's working on that. And then the little toddler, he actually had his own iPad, and they were linked to the Wi-Fi at the medical clinic. And we were sitting there for probably over an hour waiting for our turn. And I just thought, people aren't aware of the potential damage we're doing to our unborn babies, but also to our toddlers and our children who their cells are rapidly developing. And there is so much research that you and I have now seen that are saying, I was just thinking as an example, was it in Belgium or in France, it's illegal to give anyone under the age of 7 a mobile phone. But here we are in Australia, we don't have any restrictions. So people aren't aware of it. And that's...
I know. And you know what? Can you imagine if they only knew? If they only knew, there's no way that they would give that child that tablet or that mobile phone to play with. And
exactly.
Yeah. And I'm exactly, I feel exactly the same as you with that too. That's one thing that really makes me cringe, because these poor innocent children, the poor innocent parents, if they just knew, then they certainly wouldn't be doing that.
No, exactly.
And if I could ask you, Bronwyn, if there was one tip that you would like to leave with the listeners, what would that be?
Ooh, I would definitely, one tip, I would have no Wi-Fi. at all.
I
So,
don't.
yep, no, we have the button that we can turn it on if we choose, but we choose not to. We've got everything hardwired. So one tip, and particularly even as a starting point, so that it's not too overwhelming for people, when people are doing their rest and repair work, and so nighttime when you go to bed, have the modem totally powered off. So there's no lights on, nobody's home, and then you know that you've reduced your radiation exposure whilst everyone's doing their rest and repair. And then that could also be extended that if you don't need it turned on during the day, don't turn it on. So just use it as an oven. When you need it, turn it on, wait for it to, a minute or two to power up, use it, turn it back off again, if that's how the setup is. But yeah, avoid at all costs. Yeah.
I love that tip, and that's one that I would highly recommend too. If
Beautiful.
you can do anything, please just turn that wireless router off when you're not using it, because it doesn't just sit there and do its little thing. It's broadcasting throughout the house the whole time it's on. So, and what drives you to keeping on doing this work?
My goodness. There are times recently when I really question what is the difference. So I went down the rabbit hole of particularly the 5G rollout. So in Melbourne, I tend to get very, we've got to make a difference. This isn't right. I actually sat in Parliament House in Melbourne, and there was an inquest. So we had the committee sat there, and it was the first time in my life where I felt that I was a little bit of dog poo on the bottom of these guys' shoes. So we had all these politicians in, it was very interesting. They did not want us there at all. And the whole purpose of this public inquiry was to tell us how they're going to roll out 5G. It was not open to public debate at all. And for me, it was the hypocrisy of it all, where Ericsson was given 3 hours to present all of how it's going to be rolled out. We then had the head of the Oceania Radiation Scientific Advisory Committee. He was not allowed to physically appear in front of the committee, but he was on a phone call to present his opposition to 5G rollout and all the health effects. He was given 3 minutes on the phone, which only worked out to about a minute and a half because there was problems with the connection. And that made me realise that all they were concerned about is how it's going to be rolled out, what they're planning to do, the benefits to the big guys. And I fully agree with the technology is sensational. It is the next level. And it's for mining, it's going to be fantastic out in the mines. Agriculture, it would be fantastic. There are so many positives for it and how it's going to apply. But the big but is no one is looking at the health effects to us, the people and the population, and they don't want to, and they choose not to. So that's where I just go, put my hand up. I realized I am beating my head against a brick wall. So I almost threw up my hands and walked away. And I think I swore, stamped my feet, had a tantrum. And then where I felt targeted. So I know with one of the things that I do is I was heavily involved, or I still am, where we will stop Smart G Melbourne. We had to rename our group because we were being targeted by trolls. Many people in the area who were electrical engineers. It was like they all got together and decided, let's have a lot of fun with this group of people. And we were very quick to be called conspiracy theorists. We're anti this, we're anti that, put a tinfoil hat on. And I'm blown away with that, because we've got scientists who used to be paid by our government who did this research, and they're the ones putting their hand up in the red flags. But nobody wants to know, because the money that is invested in this, sorry, you've got me started. This is my passion that comes out.
Me too.
So, yep. So for me to keep being driven to do this work, it is, I feel that we're very early days of fighting the David and Goliath battle that is necessary. And I was also on the Stop Smart Meters Australia committee for a couple of years, and I realised that, United Energy in Victoria and in Melbourne, we must have a smart meter. whereas the rest of Australia can opt out, or so forth. So I realised what is my position in life? What can I do that is a positive? And it is going into people's homes and identifying all the sources, and then do what I can do without being distraught and lowering my vibration. I can very much help others as and when it's needed. If people want my help, I'm here. I'm not trying to now talk to people who don't want to know. If the brick wall is up, I'm not sort of like the Pink Floyd who's going to beat it down or whatever. I'll work with people who want my help and search out building biologists throughout Australia so that we can help them.
And
Yep.
I totally hear what you're saying. Excuse me. And I guess like smoking, unleaded petrol, thalidomide, all those things, we just have to wait
Yes.
until the public become awake and
Yes.
realise that this is an issue. We're dealing with health issues, and that's exactly why we have to keep going, because it's the people that excuse me, are unaware and that are looking for our services. If we can just start somewhere, then they get a voice too, and they can help their family members protect themselves. And we just do what we can, don't we, on the ground, so to speak, and hope that it builds up, which it will. It has to.
Yes.
And then things will be a little bit different down the track. Now, is there anything else that you would like to share with us that you feel is really important for people to know? Anything about what you do, because I know you do so much stuff, so much.
Yes. I sometimes think it's little things like learning to read the ingredients. It's like so many people are doing, the food, so the packaging, and people know how to read. If it's got MSG, you don't buy it. But think like that even for our products that we bring into our home. It's almost question everything that we bring into our home without being overwhelmed. And that's where there's so many of us, to refer this on to. We're not protected by our government and by the consumer market. And I think even yesterday here in Melbourne, an article came out from mainstream mainstream media, saying that even our cosmetic industry still has heavy metals. It still has lead in particular. And I just thought, oh my God, how has that slipped back under again? Because I thought we got to the point where people were aware of that. But unfortunately, every new generation, every new, person coming in has to almost start the research again. That's when I realised if we've got industries that are self-regulated, so they set their own standards, they set their own guidelines, and our government is more than happy to, phase it out in the next 10 to 15 years. No one's in a hurry. They've got a great product. Everyone's using it. So let's not tell people that it's, connected to, I was going to say different cancers or endocrine disrupting chemicals. That just so wrong on so many levels. And Johnson & Johnson, their talc powder. I walked into a chemist pharmacy the other day and it's still on the shelf.
Does it still have the same ingredients in it though, Bronwyn? Oh my gosh,
it's got, so it's got talc and parfum, 2 ingredients. And the reason this has happened, so in America, it's gone through all the legal system and they've paid millions and millions of money to people who have been affected by it. So we stopped getting the American market, but we can now buy it through Thailand. So it's still being produced. It hasn't been taken off the shelf. It is still available, a bit like your Teflon cooking products. The company went broke. They sold it off for $1 and you can still buy it. It's sort of like, until the stock is gone, we can still sell it off because it's all about the money.
Yes.
And it's the same with these other products. It just is astounding. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's no duty of care anywhere for any of it. Like we like you say, and like a lot of us say, we now have to be so totally responsible for everything we bring into our homes. We've really got to do that research.
Yes, exactly. And it's just keeping it simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Go back to very basics, keeping it simple.
Yep. And now, Bronwyn, you're based in Melbourne.
Yes.
Yes. So So your business is called?
It's called Creating Healthy Spaces. Thank you. I've got a web page with all my contact details on the web page. You'll also find me on Facebook, again, Creating Healthy Spaces. Also, the Australians for Safer Technology Melbourne is a page that I'm admin for. Where else am I? I've started on Instagram because I realised for business, Instagram is the quick and easy way to go, and LinkedIn. So I do find I do a lot of speaking roles and in raising the awareness and so forth. So available on a number of different social media platforms.
Great.
But if anyone's interested, or email is an easy way to contact with me.
So that's Creating Healthy Spaces. Now, you also offer not just EMF assessments, but you can do mold assessments as well.
Yes, I do.
Correct?
So at the moment, yes. So with the mold, it's rife in Melbourne because of all the rain that we've had and the storms and so forth, and lack of waterproofing. But that's for another interview another time. And I do a lot of work where people are just really unwell, and they've been seeing doctor after doctor for year after year, and they finally realise, what about the environment? So I'm doing a lot of work where very much the holistic healthy home audit. So when I walk in the door, I'm looking for everything. So whether it's allergens, chemicals, water, outdoor air pollution, how close do they live to a busy intersection? Are they living next to a golf course, schools? What's the design of the house? And then what blows my mind is the functionality of the house and how the family live in the house. So do they open windows and let fresh air in? Do they heat the house? I've had an amazing learning curve where the husband doesn't put the heater on, and at nighttime where they live, it gets down to below zero. And so their house is constantly cold and damp and it doesn't dry out. So that's been a really interesting, trying to explain to him, please put your heater on at nighttime to about 13 degrees minimum, because that's the dew point that between the outside cold air and internally. So amazing. Yep. So it is very much the science of the building.
So Bronwyn, I'd just like to say thank you so much for taking the time out to have a chat with me today. And I just want to let anybody that is watching this know, if you are after an EMF consultant, a mold consultant in Melbourne, then Bronwyn Bennett's your girl at Creating Healthy Spaces. And thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this valuable. And Bronwyn, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks, Diane, for your time.